I don't even remember what we were arguing about that morning, something petty, probably, but it was the silence afterward that stuck with me. A silence not born of peace but of dismissal. Not the kind that waits for the right words. The kind that's already moved on. That kind of silence crawls under your skin and rearranges the way you hear everything. I sat in my car for an hour after she left, not out of heartbreak, not yet, but because I realized I didn't know what game I was playing anymore. And if I didn't know the game, then what were the rules? Who was even on my team? Rebecca had always been unpredictable in her own way. Unapologetic. She had this energy that made people orbit her without ever really touching the center. It used to feel like gravity. Lately, it felt like static, loud, meaningless, everywhere. I started noticing small things that didn't fit, not like puzzle pieces in the wrong place, but like pieces from an entirely different puzzle shoved in anyway. Receipts from places we never went. Calls from unknown numbers that got silenced in a flash when I walked in the room. Lipstick shades I hadn't seen on her before, left smudged on mugs that were hidden behind the microwave like they were afraid to be caught. But the moment everything shifted, and I mean truly shifted, like the floor beneath you isn't where you left it, was the Thursday she claimed she was meeting her cousin for dinner. I asked which cousin. She blinked too slow. Amanda, she said. We don't have an Amanda. That was the first time I decided to test her. Not confront, just observe. I followed her, not recklessly, not with rage. With clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't come from suspicion but from the sharp edge of knowing something is already broken and just watching the cracks map themselves out. She didn't go to a family dinner. She drove to a parking garage in Midtown and got into someone else's car. I watched from a level above as she adjusted the rearview mirror like she belonged there, like she'd done it 100 times. The man beside her didn't touch her, but they sat there talking for 10 minutes. She laughed once, touching her throat like she used to when she wanted to be noticed. Then they left the garage together, her walking a step behind him, looking down, but smiling. I didn't follow them past that. I didn't need to. I went home and sat at the kitchen table and stared at the salt shaker for half an hour, trying to remember the last time she asked me anything about my day. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I got creative. I sent her a box. Not just any box, a very specific one. Wrapped simply, no label. Inside, a single item. I won't say what it was yet, that's coming, but it was chosen for impact. Not danger. Not revenge. Just exposure. A truth bomb without the explosion. A message that would only make sense to her and to him. I wanted to see how she'd react when the illusion cracked under its own weight. They both panicked. And from the way she scrambled the moment she opened it, from the wild look in her eyes like a hunted animal realizing the cage door wasn't locked anymore, I knew she wasn't just lying. She was invested. Deep. Past the point of return. You're not ready for what happened next. I didn't go home that night. I sat in a bar 2 neighborhoods over, not drinking, just watching people, real people, talking, laughing, touching each other like their presence mattered. It made me feel like a ghost. Like I'd been quietly replaced in my own life and no one sent the memo. Her first call came in at 8:42 p.m. I didn't answer. The second was a text, "Where are you?" Then, "Did you send me something today?" There it was. She took the bait. I didn't respond. I wanted to let it cook. The box wasn't anything illegal. It wasn't violent. But it was personal, deeply. It was a manila-wrapped package with no return address, delivered to our doorstep while she was home alone. Inside, I placed a hotel room keycard, not one of ours. One of theirs. I found it a week prior when I decided to check her gym bag, the one she never let me touch. It had no logo, just a faint red triangle in the corner. Took me 3 days and 2 awkward conversations with hotel staff to trace it back to the Callister Hotel on Burnham Avenue. The second item in the box was a photo, not printed from my phone, not digital. Developed on glossy paper like in the old days. She and that man, sitting in his car, her fingers around a straw poking out of a smoothie like it was a date from sophomore year. I'd taken the picture from the level above the parking garage, angled just right to capture their laughter, her hand touching his knee. The third item? A note handwritten. Just 4 words. You left the door. No punctuation. No name. But I knew the moment she read it, she would spiral. Because those were the exact words she whispered to me once, years ago, after our first real fight, when she thought I might leave her. It was her way of asking me to stay without admitting she was scared. I'd never told anyone. The second I sent that box, the board flipped. The players didn't know the rules anymore. And I was no longer just the husband, I was the storm on the edge of their safety. At 10:17 p.m. she called again. I finally picked up. "Where the hell are you?" Her voice wasn't angry. It was shredded. Anxious. Fragile in a way I hadn't heard since her father's funeral. "Out," I said. "Enjoying a quiet night without liars." "What does that mean?" she said, too fast. "You got the box," I replied. "Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about." Silence. I could hear the TV in the background, some old sitcom rerun, laugh track echoing like a mockery. I don't understand what you're trying to do, she finally said. Oh, I think you do, I said calmly. Who is he? She didn't answer. And that right there was all the answer I needed. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed. It wasn't fear anymore. It was calculation. You're being paranoid. That photo could be anyone. That photo. Not those photos. Not what photo. She admitted it existed. Did you leave the door, Rebecca? I asked her quietly. And she cracked. What do you want from me? A confession? A meltdown? You want me to cry so you can feel like a man again? There it was, the real her, stepping into the light. No apologies. No shame. Just deflection sharpened into a blade. I want the truth, I said. You couldn't handle the truth if I drew it in crayon and stuck it to your forehead, she hissed. Stop playing detective. You're not clever. You're pathetic. She hung up. I stared at the dead screen in my hand for a full minute, then laughed, low and joyless. Not because I was broken, but because I realized she wasn't hiding something fragile. She was guarding something rotten. And I was done treating it like treasure. I didn't go home for 3 days. I stayed in a cheap rental apartment above a dry cleaner that smelled like starch and burnt cotton. I left my wedding ring on the bathroom sink and didn't touch it. Every night, I stared at the ceiling and imagined her face when she opened the box. Not the panic, I'd already seen that in her voice. No. I wanted to see the moment realization hit her. That there were no more lies left that would work on me. The silence between us was an agreement neither of us signed. She didn't call. I didn't ask. But I watched. I had connected her card to the app on my phone years ago, a feature I never thought would matter until now. She wasn't going to the office. Not after that box. Her car spent hours in strange parking lots, moving in erratic patterns. She wasn't hiding from me. She was spinning. I knew she'd make a mistake soon. And on Saturday, she did. At 6:12 p.m., she drove to the Callister Hotel again. She wasn't cautious this time. She didn't park around the corner or take side entrances. She walked in bold, fast, wearing a gray hoodie like she thought that was enough to erase her identity. I waited outside for 28 minutes before I followed. I didn't plan to confront her there. I only wanted to confirm. But then I saw him. The man from the parking garage. Tall, polished, with the kind of face you trust before you should. She hugged him in the lobby like a sister greeting her brother at Christmas. 2 seconds too long. Her fingers curled into his back like she was trying to make sure he didn't evaporate. They didn't go upstairs. They went to the bar. And that's when I walked in. I didn't yell. I didn't punch anyone. That's not how this was going to go. I walked to their table like I was meant to be there. Her face drained in real time, not just surprise. Fear. Not of me. Of what I now knew. Don't get up, I said, pulling out a chair. I just came to meet the man who's been parking in my spot. The guy, his name, I later learned, was Troy. Looked at her, confused. Who is this? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Tried again. He's my husband. The word dropped between them like a stone into glass. Troy sat back. His posture shifted. Not guilty, but wary. A man suddenly aware he might be in the wrong movie. You're married? He said slowly. You told me you were divorced. For 2 years. My turn to blink. I said we were separated, she snapped. No. You said divorced, he repeated, firmer now. I didn't think he was still Still what? I cut in. Still believing your calendar full of cousins named Amanda? She glared at me, finally snapping into the version of herself I was waiting for. What do you want, Daniel? You want to make a scene? You want to humiliate me? I didn't need to, I said. You did that all by yourself. Troy stood, shaking his head. You lied to me, he said to her, voice low. You said he was crazy. You said he was abusive. You told me he threatened to burn your clothes. That one nearly made me laugh. Burn her clothes? I had trouble even raising my voice. She turned to him, switching gears so fast it made my teeth clench. I had to say something. You wouldn't have understood. You don't think I would have understood you're married? She flinched. Not from guilt. From losing control. I stood up. You're both welcome to each other, I said. Just know, that box? That wasn't the beginning. That was the middle. I didn't look back as I left. But I knew one thing: as the doors closed behind me, her story had just collapsed in public. And neither of them had the script to recover. Next comes the real unraveling. I didn't hear from her that night. Not a text, not a call, not even a flurry of pitiful half-excuses like I expected. Which meant one thing: she was recalculating. Rewriting the story again, only now she knew I wasn't the audience anymore. I was the threat. The next morning, I walked back into our house like it was unfamiliar territory. Everything was too quiet. I could still smell her perfume on the curtains, that synthetic floral scent she always wore too strong. I wasn't home. I was in a museum of a life I no longer lived in. She was there, waiting, sitting at the kitchen table in a black hoodie and sweatpants like she wanted to look broken. Like that would help? Daniel, she said softly. We need to talk. I ignored her and went to the fridge. Opened it. Looked at nothing. Closed it again. I wasn't hungry. I just needed something to move. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said. I didn't answer. It started. I don't know. Last spring. I was lonely. Lonely. I finally looked at her. I was in the same house. Every day. Talking to you. Touching you. Sleeping beside you. What do you mean lonely? You don't understand, Then explain it, I said, louder now. Use words. Real ones. She stood up. You stopped paying attention. You didn't see me anymore. You were always working, always tired. You looked right through me. I laughed, but it came out hollow. So, what? You punished me with another man? No, she snapped. It wasn't like that. Troy understood me. He asked me things. He made me feel like I mattered. I stepped closer. Not threatening. Just direct. You lied to him. You told him I was abusive. I had to, she whispered. Had to. I stared at her, incredulous. You had to invent an entire victim narrative to justify your cheap little secret? She didn't reply. And that's when I saw it, the flicker of resentment behind her eyes. Not shame. Resentment. She was angry I exposed her. Angry I shattered the fantasy. You were never supposed to know, she muttered, and there it was. The honest sentence. The truth bleeding through the cracks. I grabbed the box from the counter, the one she'd hidden under the sink after opening it. I held it between us. This ruined your fun, didn't it? You're being cruel now, she said. No. Now, I'm being fair. She folded her arms. So what do you want to do, Daniel? Throw me out? Divorce me? Run to your friends and cry about how your wife betrayed you? I want to watch you squirm, I said. Because for once, you're not the one in control. And with that, I left the box on the table and walked away again, not because I couldn't stand the sight of her, but because I could finally see her clearly. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She wasn't even sorry. She was furious that the game had changed and she wasn't holding the cards anymore. Sunday passed without a word between us. I stayed in the guest room, door locked, not because I feared her, but because the silence was now power and I had no intention of surrendering it. She wandered the house like a stranger, careful not to cross my path. She wasn't ashamed. She was strategizing. Plotting. The silence wasn't guilt. It was regrouping. On Monday, I went back to work like nothing had happened. I smiled at my coworkers, answered emails, joined a Zoom meeting about supply chain logistics while my marriage smoldered behind my eyes. The strange part? I felt lighter. Like I had finally put down a weight I didn't know I was carrying. I wasn't pretending anymore. She was. And I could smell the panic under her skin every time we passed in the hallway. But I wasn't done. Not even close. That night, I sat on the back patio with my laptop. The box had stirred something in her, I'd seen it. She knew someone else might know. And that was a vulnerability she couldn't stomach. So I made it worse. I logged into her email. The password hadn't changed. She never thought I'd be bold enough to look. Or maybe she assumed I was still the same man who believed her Sunday night headaches and forgotten birthdays were just normal slumps in a long marriage. I typed Troy into the search bar. Dozens of threads. Some short, some long. All pathetic. But it wasn't just the affection that made my stomach turn. It was the lies. To him, she was a survivor. A woman who'd escaped a cold, controlling husband. She painted herself as trapped. Fragile. Brave. She said I tracked her phone, screamed at her for wearing makeup, threatened her cat. We don't even have a cat. In one email, dated just a week before I sent the box, she told him she was thinking of moving in with him. Once I'm sure he's out of the picture, she wrote. He's starting to suspect. I have to be careful. He's manipulative when he feels cornered. It was almost poetic. I was the villain in her fable. The faceless obstacle in her love story. But now that I knew the script, I had the ending in my hands, and she didn't even know I'd read the last page. The next morning, I printed those emails. Every word. Every photo. I placed them in a second envelope. Not for her. For Troy. That afternoon, I waited outside his office building. I didn't hide. I wanted him to see me. To wonder. To feel the same unease I'd felt for weeks. He came out at 5:12 p.m. I walked right up and handed him the envelope. What's this? He asked. The real story, I said. Before you give her your house key. He opened it right there on the sidewalk. His eyes scanned the pages. A photo of them together. Her emails. Her fantasies. Her revisions of me. This is insane, he said quietly. No, I replied. She is. You just haven't seen the third act yet. I left him standing there. No threat. No warning. Just information. Because the one thing Rebecca couldn't handle, the one thing that shattered her more than being caught, was being out of control of the narrative. That night, she called me by my full name. Daniel. What did you do? I smiled. I gave your fairy tale a reality check. She stared at me, breathing uneven. You think this makes you the hero? No, I said. But it does make me free. And for the first time, she didn't answer. Because even she knew the story was no longer hers to tell. 2 days after Troy got the envelope, Rebecca's world started folding in on itself. She tried to pretend nothing had changed. She made coffee like she always did, strong, bitter, a splash of oat milk, and placed a mug silently at my spot at the table like we were still playing house. I didn't touch it. She didn't sit down. She just hovered, waiting for me to acknowledge her existence, like my silence was suffocating her more than any fight ever could. That same morning, she called Troy. I listened from the upstairs hallway. Troy, please. Just listen. You don't understand the context. Pause. No, he's twisting everything. He's always been like this. Longer pause. You can't just disappear on me. Another pause. Shorter. Then a cold voice. So that's it? After everything I told you? A minute later, she slammed her phone onto the kitchen counter so hard the screen cracked. I went downstairs, took one look at the splintered glass, and said nothing. She didn't either. But something inside her snapped that day, not the part that loved Troy, no, that was never real love, but the part that believed she could juggle two realities and never drop a piece. Now both of her men saw her. The lies were out in daylight. And she didn't know how to exist when no one was buying the character she'd spent years perfecting. That evening, she tried something new. She cooked dinner. From scratch. Not the microwave reheats or takeout she'd been leaning on for months. Actual pasta. Roasted vegetables. Her grandmother's old lasagna recipe that she hadn't touched in years. The scent filled the house like a memory trying to bribe its way back in. When I came into the kitchen, she looked up with a tired smile. Not soft. Desperate. I thought we could eat together. I walked past her. Sat down. Took one bite. Looked her straight in the eye. Tastes like guilt. Her jaw tensed. I'm trying, Daniel. No. You're losing. Trying would have been 6 months ago when I asked you if something was wrong and you said I was imagining things. You left me behind. I was standing right next to you. You just chose to stare at someone else. She sat across from me, legs crossed, hands folded like she was auditioning for a new version of herself. I messed up. You engineered an entire second life. She flinched. That one cut? I was scared, she said. No. You were bored. So you made a playground out of other people's trust. Her voice dropped low. Do you want to fix this or not? And that's when I realized she didn't believe she was wrong. She believed she'd been caught before she could rewrite the ending. This isn't something to fix, I said. This is something to survive. Her face went cold again, that mask I knew too well. The one that showed up during arguments, during manipulation, when her back was to the wall and she had no weapon left but cruelty. You think you're better than me, she said, voice barely above a whisper. But you're just bitter. You don't love me. You just hate losing. I leaned in. Calm. Precise. Rebecca, I don't love you because you killed the part of me that could. And for the first time, her eyes filled with something real. Not regret. Not sorrow. Just fear. Fear that the person who once stood between her and the world was now watching from the other side and walking away. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, staring at her untouched plate, and finally understood I was no longer the man she could twist. And the door I left open in our last real conversation? This time, I closed it. The next morning, she was gone. Her closet was ransacked. Half the hangers empty. Toothbrush missing. Jewelry box stripped bare. She didn't leave a note. Not even a text. Just silence, like she thought vanishing would somehow reverse everything. As if she could just slither into a new story and pretend this one never burned down. I should have felt something. Relief. Closure. Satisfaction. But there was only space, wide, empty space where the chaos used to be. She didn't take everything, though. She left behind her wedding dress in its white zip-up bag, stuffed carelessly behind the coats in the hall closet. I found it hours later while looking for an umbrella. Unzipped it. Stared at it. It smelled like old perfume and dust. She left behind the lie we started with. How poetic. But I wasn't done with her. 3 days passed. I used that time like a scalpel. Quietly. Deliberately. I called my lawyer, had the separation papers drawn up. I pulled my name off her car insurance, our joint accounts, the streaming services, even the coffee subscription she never drank from. I erased myself from every digital corner of her life, not in anger, not out of spite. Just to reclaim oxygen. Then, just when I thought it was over, she came back. It was Saturday, just after sunset. I was on the back porch, headphones in, scrolling through emails when the porch door opened. She didn't knock. Didn't text. Just walked in like she still had a key to this life. Her hair was pulled back tight. No makeup. Black jeans and a jacket I'd never seen before. She looked smaller somehow. Not thinner, diminished. The bravado drained out of her, but something feral still gleamed under her skin. I want to talk, she said. I stood. That's brave. She didn't flinch. I made mistakes. Which ones? I asked. The lies, the affair, the gaslighting, or the part where you tried to rewrite history? She took a step forward. All of it. I waited. Watched. She looked around the porch like it was a memory she didn't expect to hurt this much. I panicked, she said. When you sent that box. When I realized you knew. I didn't know how to handle it. Maybe because you knew what you were doing was sick. I didn't mean to fall into it. You built it, I snapped. Brick by brick. You lit the match and then blamed me for the fire. Her eyes burned now, but the tears didn't come. She didn't cry in front of me anymore. She cried for Troy, probably. For the man she manipulated with stories of emotional cruelty and cat-strangling husbands. You don't know what it's like to wake up and hate your life, she said suddenly, her voice sharp. To feel like you've been buried under someone else's idea of happiness. You said you chose this life. I did. And then I suffocated in it. And instead of telling me that, you played house while sneaking into another one across town? She was breathing hard now, her shoulders shaking from holding something in. I didn't come back to fight, she said. No, you came back because Troy stopped answering. That landed. She swallowed hard. Looked away. I just want to talk, she whispered. To explain. You already did, I said. With every message you sent him. With every lie you told both of us. I pulled a manila envelope from my jacket. Handed it to her. What is this? Your exit, I said. Separation paperwork. Uncontested. Clean. Signed. All it needs is yours. She stared at it like it might bite her. I gave you every chance, I added. Every moment you needed to be honest, to be brave, to fight for something real. You spit on all of them. She opened the envelope. Saw the forms. Her hands were trembling. I wasn't ready for all of this, she whispered. I nodded slowly. That's the one thing we agree on. She sat down on the steps. Quiet now. Still. Like the wind had finally stopped. We didn't speak after that. I left her there with the papers and the porch light humming overhead. I didn't ask where she would go. I didn't care. The woman who came back wasn't my wife. And the man who let her back in? He was gone too. She didn't sign the papers. Not that night. Not the next day. Not even after she left them behind on the porch like a rejection letter too painful to acknowledge. I found them half wet with dew the next morning. I brought them inside, laid them out on the dining table to dry. She was trying to stall, I knew it. Delay reality. Hope that time would fray my resolve the way it used to, back when I still believed her version of the truth had any value. But that version was dead now. And the silence that followed her every evasion? That was just its ghost. Then came the twist I didn't expect. Troy called me. I stared at his name on my phone for almost a minute before I answered. I'd never heard his voice outside of that one brief moment in the hotel lobby. Now it sounded different. Tired. Sharpened by something that hadn't finished hurting him yet. Daniel, he said. I think we need to talk. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just listened. And what he told me. It detonated everything I thought I already understood. She told me she was pregnant, he said. I went cold. When? I asked. 2 months ago. Said it was mine. Said she wanted to keep it. I believed her. I started looking at apartments, changed my shifts, even told my parents. And now? She said she lost it. There was a silence between us that wasn't just awkward. It was loaded. You don't believe her, I said. He laughed bitterly. I don't know what to believe anymore. But when I saw what she wrote to you, the way she twisted everything, I realized she doesn't just lie. She constructs. She builds stories like bunkers, and when they collapse, she walks out of the rubble like it was someone else's fault. I exhaled slowly. You're not wrong. I feel like an idiot. You're not, I said. But now you get it. There was another pause. She texted me again last night. Said she still loved me. Said you were trying to erase her. She's trying to stall the consequences. Troy sighed. I told her I'm done. I blocked her after that. But I figured you should know. I thanked him. Hung up. And then I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. That single word pulsing in my head. Pregnant. Was it true? Was it a lie? Did she fake a miscarriage to reel him in, or worse, was she still pregnant and trying to pin it on him before it was too late? I didn't confront her. I didn't call. Instead, I made an appointment with my lawyer. We added a line to the separation terms: mandatory paternity testing for any claims made post-divorce. Clean break. Legal shield. No loopholes. And that night, just when I thought she might finally disappear, she came back again. She was standing in the driveway when I pulled in. No suitcase this time. Just her. Arms crossed, face unreadable, like she had rehearsed whatever speech she was about to give a dozen times and still didn't believe it would work. You talked to him, she said. I stepped out of the car. You expected me not to? She looked exhausted. Not the kind that comes from crying. The kind that comes from running out of lies. I didn't mean to say that about the baby, she said quietly. It was a moment of weakness. So it was a lie? She hesitated. And in that second, that single, fatal second, she chose to double down instead of surrender. I thought I was. And then I wasn't. I tilted my head. So it was never real? I don't know. You used it, I said. You weaponized it. She took a step forward, eyes wide. I just wanted something to hold on to. You set fire to the house and then begged for warmth. She winced. Said nothing. I walked past her. Signed the papers. She turned. What happens if I don't? I looked over my shoulder. Then I stopped being polite. And for once, she didn't follow me inside 3 days of silence. Not a word. No texts. No calls. Not even those weak attempts to provoke a reaction, the fake emergencies, the guilt-laced what-ifs, the weaponized nostalgia. She vanished completely, and for the first time since this whole twisted unraveling began, I didn't wonder where she was. I didn't care. Until her mother called me. Her voice came through the phone like a rusty hinge, confused, uncomfortable. Daniel, she said, Rebecca just showed up here, in Florida. I sat down on the edge of the bed, tension crawling down my back. She didn't say she was going anywhere. She said she needed to get away. That everything was falling apart. Did she tell you why? There was a pause. A long, delicate pause. Then, she said you were punishing her. Emotionally manipulating her. Trying to trap her. I let out a dry laugh. Of course. Even hundreds of miles away, she was still clinging to the narrative, the one where she's the misunderstood victim, the fragile woman being hunted by her cruel, calculating husband. She lied to you, I said calmly. She lied to everyone. I figured, her mother said softly. I've seen her do it before. That surprised me. Her mother had always been the quiet type, gentle, enabling. But there was something in her voice now that hinted at exhaustion, a lifetime of watching her daughter spin webs and act wounded when they snapped. I just thought you should know where she is, she added. And that I'm not falling for it this time. I thanked her. Hung up. Sat in silence. Rebecca was fleeing. Not from me, from consequences. From the trail of chaos that finally refused to bend to her version of the truth. But what she didn't know, what she never seemed to calculate, was that the storm she thought she was escaping was already behind her. All that was left now was cleanup. Later that afternoon, I got a notification she'd viewed the separation documents I'd sent via the lawyer's secure portal. 10 minutes later, a signature. Digital. Final. Irrevocable. No message. No dramatic last words. Just a quiet surrender, the way cowards retreat from battles they started but never had the stomach to finish. I forwarded the confirmation to my lawyer. Done. Legally. Officially. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing in a burned house, surrounded by ash and silence, knowing the fire didn't kill you, but also realizing you were never going to live in that house again. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd once imagined family dinners, holiday mornings, late-night laughter. And for the first time in a long time, I exhaled. No more gaslighting. No more manipulation. No more walking on eggshells in my own damn life. I was free. But freedom, I've learned, doesn't come with music or confetti. It comes quietly. With paperwork. With bruised hearts. With the taste of salt and steel in your mouth. And sometimes freedom still hurts. The house was silent. Not the kind of silence you notice after a loud noise, but the kind that has weight to it. Still. Heavy. Like it's waiting to be filled again, but it knows better than to expect the same people to return. She was gone. Legally. Physically. Spiritually. And what remained was this quiet stretch of aftermath I hadn't fully prepared for. I didn't miss her. That wasn't the feeling. It was stranger than that, like waking up from anesthesia and realizing the pain is gone, but so is a piece of you. I started sorting through what she left behind. I didn't need to, but there's something primal about reclaiming space after a storm. Her perfume bottles, half-used lipsticks, an old book of ours with notes in the margins. I boxed it all up, taped it shut, labeled it with a single word, closure. Then I found something I hadn't seen in years, a photo. From before everything. We were at a beach, wind in her hair, my arm around her waist, both of us smiling like the future was a safe bet. I held it for a second longer than I should have, then dropped it into the trash without a word. Some friends asked me if I'd start dating again. I laughed. Dating? After that circus? I wasn't looking for replacement parts. I was rebuilding from the ground up. But I did take one final step, not for revenge, not to win, just for the record. I wrote everything down. Every lie. Every twist. Every manipulation. I didn't post it anywhere. I didn't send it to her family. I just wrote it for me. A document of survival. A map of the maze she'd built and the way I clawed out of it. And at the very end of that document I wrote the sentence that began this entire unraveling. During the affair, I sent my reckless wife a mysterious box and they both panicked. That box wasn't a threat. It was a mirror. I held it up to her lies and watched them recoil. I didn't need violence. I didn't need shouting. I just needed truth wrapped tightly, delivered directly, and timed to perfection. Would I do it again? Yes. Because in the end, that box didn't just expose them. It freed me. My advice to anyone who smells something foul under the surface of their relationship? Trust your gut. Watch the details. And when the moment comes, don't scream. Don't beg. Don't break. Deliver the truth like a surgeon delivers a scalpel. Precise. Cold. Final. Because the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be opened.